We're here this morning with Al Cadenhead in his home in Newport, New Hampshire. Today is March 5th. Good morning, Al. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Okay, so how did you end up on the Bang finally?
One Sunday, I and three other guys were playing cribbage in the barracks because we had the duty. We couldn't go ashore or anything. And I was the only seaman there. The other three guys were all rated. And Master at Arms came in and says, "Are there any seamen in here?" And I already knew that the boats, transferred and took the replacements out of the Relief Crew Division. I was way down on the list. And I says, "Yo, Cadenhead, I'm here." He says, "Get your gear packed and get down to Pier 3. The Bang's leaving tonight. Go on patrol. They need a replacement." I says, "But Chief," I says, "I'm like 18th on the list." He said, "Did any other seamen in here?" And I says, nobody else answered. He says, "You're it. Get your bag packed and get going. Your orders are being cut now." I went aboard, and first thing that they told me, just stay out of everybody's way.
How many war patrols did you actually make on the Bang?
4. I made 4.
Which ones? 3, 4, 5,
I
and
went
6?
aboard on the 3rd patrol, and then did the 4th, 5th, and 6th patrol and brought it back to the States.
What do you remember about those patrols?
Well, the 3rd patrol was my baptism with fire. It was a good patrol in the damage we did and everything, but the damage we suffered was extensive. We had a very serious, of course, I was a rookie, so this is all new to me, but
Yeah.
we had made a good attack, submerged, sunk ships, and then we went down and took, depth charge, and they were tracking us and everything. We were like at 400 feet. We were what they call a thick-skin boat at that time. They had thin skin before us, and our class is what they call a thick skin. And our test depth was 400 feet. And they said that we could go down to 600 with no problem. None of the skippers like to try that. You like to try that.
Can understand why.
But anyway, we went down to 400, took a few depth charges and everything, and then we secured from silent running because the sonar reported no contacts or anything. So we secured the silent running, but fortunately, we stayed rigged for depth charge. And I moved from my station, which was on the helm at the time, in the control room with by hand, and that was a job. But I moved from that, and I was off duty when they went back, secured from silent running. So I went where my bunk was, which is the policy that as soon as you're off duty, you just go where your bunk is and get out of the way, And I went into the forward room where my bunk was.
Forward engine room or forward torpedo room?
Forward torpedo room.
Okay.
Forward torpedo room, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. Just as I got in the forward torpedo room, I remember a shipmate of mine, Pete Bates. God bless him, he's gone now. Pete was like the bosun on board the ship.
Okay.
And he was on the SD sonar, which is the one that stuck out the top. They had one that stuck out the top, then we had 2 that went out below. He was on the one out the top there, and he was right near the hatch where you went into the forward room. I stepped through and sat down, and all of a sudden Pete yelled at his talker. He says, "I got screws dead ahead." In other words, he sounds screw noise. He says, "I got screws dead ahead getting louder," and he reported it 3 times. And before he got the 3rd one out of his mouth, the depth charges hit us. And it was like a sudden bang to me. I didn't realize, I guess I was too young to be really scared, but water started coming in. All the sea valves sprung open, and valves and everything, and I can definitely recall me and a gunner's mate named Phil Tomer jumped up and were trying to close a valve over our head in the forward room. It was spraying water right into us. And then it was over. And I looked at the depth gauge, and we were down at 580 feet. We got blown down that far. Of course, we found out later that most of the depth charges hit right on us, bounced right off of us. 19 or 20 of them.
Okay, so you said 19 or 20 bounced off you.
Yes, actual depth charge counter got confused because they were such a close explosions of all of them. But they said 19 to 20 of them. And the guys that were in the conning tower told us later that they actually heard them bounce off the hull.
Wow. Wow.
But the fact that they blew us from 400 feet down to 580, and we almost lost control of the boat. We almost lost control. We were bow down and still going. And they finally blew negatives and bow buoyancy and everything to bring the bow up. Didn't go into anything of making the crew run back and forth or anything, but they were able to control the boat at 580 feet. But that was it. Screws disappeared and everything, and after we got control of the boat, we came back to the surface, and they found that most of the damage was light, but it was all in the superstructure of the boat.
Around the conning tower? Around the conning tower?
Yes, the TBT on the conning tower, this binoculars for
Yep.
bearings when you're on the surface and everything, was completely shattered.
Wow.
And the glass in it, I saw the glass in it afterwards, was about that thick. You know, it was real thick glass. It was completely shattered. And there were dents and splinters in the decking, and things like that.
Tell me a little bit about the other 3 war patrols you were on.
Okay, well, of course, that one, after that, you know, the endless days of sailing, cruising, and watch standing, and this and that and the other. We sunk more ships on the 4th Patrol, too, and suffered more depth charges, but it was all anticlimactical to me after that.
After the first time you had been in.
Suffered on the 3rd, everything, you know, hey, that wasn't bad, you know. I've been through that already.
Yeah.
You know.
So, what about the final 2 patrols?
Final 2 patrols were very taxing, and as I can recall, morale didn't go down, but we could not find any more ships to sink. We had, let's see, I think the 5th patrol, we went to the Yellow Sea. And we knew we were going to shallow water because before we left Pearl that time, before we left Pearl, they came aboard and took the decoding machines out. So we knew that we were going to shallow water. And it wasn't stated by anybody, but everybody knew, you know, how the telegraph runs through the crew. And being quartermaster striker and most of my duties being in the conning tower, I was the guy they all pumped when I came down. Where are we going? Where are we going to do? You know, what officers got this job? What officers got that job? And everything like that. But, you know, it's a normal thing because the guys in the engine room and maneuvering room and the torpedo rooms and everybody, they don't get any, you know, any feedback on where we're going and what we're going to do and everything. So,
Or scuttlebutt.
yeah.
So, go ahead. Please continue.
The 5th Patrol, like I say, in the Yellow Sea was disappointing to us. The weather was terrible. The night watches on surface were absolutely devastating to everybody. As a matter of fact, they cut the lookout guys' times from an hour up on lookout down to a half hour because the weather was so bad and it was so miserable.
Just rough seas or water temperature, rough seas?
Rough seas, air temperature. We didn't get any ice, but it was miserable. You know, it was very, very miserable and windy. Go back to the Yellow Sea, we saw one ship in the Yellow Sea, and the weather was so bad we weren't able to even make an approach on it.
Really?
But a lot of our patrolling on the 5th Patrol was getting information on what kind of electronics the Japanese had. I remember sitting for hours listening or watching the radar scope and listening with the ears on the sound waves of various interferences that we were picking up around the southern part of Japan. Remember we wrote books on, you know, make diagrams of the sine waves and everything like that for the skipper. And the only success in that patrol was the fact that we picked up Don Corzine, an aviator that had been in the water for 14 hours.
Wow.
after one of the strikes. Yeah, he was a Hellcat pilot, I think. Yeah, but we picked him up, and
So he rode you guys all the way back to Pearl, or did you run?
yeah, he stayed with us the next 3 weeks.
Oh, lucky him.
Skipper put him to work.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Out of all of those patrols and all the ships sunk, I'm sure as vessels were picked up and destroyed and sunk, there had to be some excitement in the crew about the types of ships they were sinking.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts like, for example, or the crew's thoughts and feelings when sinking a commercial vessel versus a warship?
Well, I remember one time we sunk a ship on, I think it was on the 4th patrol. Yeah, 4th patrol. At nighttime, we hit a tanker, and I was on the bridge at the time assisting the OD, and we hit a tanker that blew up. Must have been aviation gas, because it was a full loaded tanker. We hardly picked it up on the radar because it was so low in the water, so it was really loaded. And it made it like daylight. And a lot of the guys started cheering, and the captain was on the bridge, and he turned around and shut everybody up. He says, "Don't forget, there are sailors out there in the water just like you that are dying." He says, "We're at war, our job is to sink their ships." But he says, "They're out there, they're just like sailors just like you, even though we're from another country." So he says, "I don't want to hear any more cheering."
If you could or would change anything in submarines, if you had the ability to change anything, what would it be, if anything?
The only thing I can really think of, and I know at the time they couldn't do it, excuse me, put more bunks on board for the enlisted men.
Didn't like hot racking?
First patrol, I had the hot rack in the forward room.
Yeah.
And it got better after we fired torpedoes, you know, it had more room, but other than that, no, I didn't like it. And I observed, had observed, that every time you came into port, there were a group of people that were made ranks, and they were overstocked in certain ranks, and they transfer off and take on replacements. And I watched for that, and I grabbed myself a nice bunk in the back in the crew's quarters, just outside the galley. I grabbed that bunk before anybody else did. I rushed all my stuff and put it on there so nobody would take it.
On the time that you were on the Bang, did you notice any change in technology on board the boat?
Noticed, yes. A lot of change in technology, particularly in radar. When I first went aboard, we had no radar to pick up aircraft. I was on the 3rd run. 4th run, we had radar to pick up aircraft. Didn't tell us the altitude of the bearing, but it told us there was an aircraft within range. That was our first radar. They improved on the surface radar that we had. I think they called it SD or something, I don't remember. And they gave us what they called a PPI scope, which was a circular thing that we could get our positions. Before that, we just had the regular, what they call the grass field.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of grass, and you see one there, oh, there's that contact at that bearing. But then we got the PPI scope. Oh yeah, we got the new Mark 18 electric torpedoes that left no wake.
That's cool.
Oh,
Do you have any problems with detonators on those fish?
yes, we had a lot of duds. A lot
Really?
of what they call duds. No
Yeah.
explosions.
Right.
Here in sonar could hear them hit, but no explosions. You know, that was about it. But they seem to have ironed that out for the next patrol. When we left out of Midway, we got all new torpedoes and everything. They seem to have ironed out most of the problems.
This is the last question I'll ask you. Is there anything that you would like to say to the rest of your subsequent shipmates from the Bang that we haven't covered by this interview, or just some general comments that you would like to make? Now's the time.
I was reflecting last night and going through names in my mind, and it was amazing how many names I come up with after all these years. And I could visualize each one of these individuals. Great crew. They were a great crew.